we would not be who we are as the COVID Coalition, representing change agents, community organizations, faith-based organizations, and foundations, if we didn't stop and say, enough is enough. And I'd like to share with you the reality that what we see in the streets in terms of police brutality is part of a much longer and historical continuum of depression. But one artist brings this to mind, and no doubt you've heard this. It's the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar all over, syrupy sweet? Or maybe this dream, it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? We're here with you today to talk about both the history, the context, and the explosion of power and rebellion and pain and frustration and hope that is amongst all of us, not only in the United States, but so wonderfully across the world, are in this moment with you. And we are here in this moment with you as well.
I am a mother of 2 sons, 2 Black sons. Listen to that, 2 Black African-American sons. I don't even have to say anything else behind that statement because you already know what it means. And why is that? I'd say it's because America has spent too many years filling in the rest of the sentence when it comes to Blackness in this country, especially Black boys, Black men. In this country, Blackness has been the substitute for all things criminal. Anyone showing up in Black skin seems to trigger the myth of danger. You don't believe it? I got a couple examples for you. A Black man on an elevator or walking by, notice a woman clenching her purse a little bit tighter? Or what about Black teenagers, particularly Black boys, hanging out at the local mall? They're considered to be a gang or even thugs. Or what about a group of Black males on the front porch of a residence or in front of a gas station or a store just talking? There's something illegal got to be going on, right? They got to be doing something. Or I think the worst insult of all, what about wearing a hoodie in public? Remember that? Imagine a simple fashion statement became a mark of death because it was made to be the identifying factor of being criminal and Black. Apparently, when Blackness shows up, a dangerous threat shows up too. And this threat is not just perceived by some in law enforcement, it's private citizens too. I mean, just going for a jog, barbecuing in the park, sitting in the lobby of a hotel, even cashing a discrimination lawsuit check at one's own bank is reason enough to be suspicious and call the police. This country has attached value to race. In fact, when Blackness shows up, too often the individual is not even seen at all. Black skin is made to feel invisible, discounted. Now, I want you to pause for a second, because I don't want you to get intellectually dishonest on me right now and start saying that I don't see race. Yes, you do. We all do. How could you not? Race is embedded in the very fabric and psyche of our being. In this country, it has become the American way. The historical racial teachings and messaging says Black people are lazy, poor, incapable of feeling pain, unteachable, unintelligent, great entertainers, great sports players, lustful savages, physically strong, and dangerous. And just in case you don't know where all that came from, during the era of slavery, phony science and unsupported medical opinions were used to justify slavery and ultimately solidify these labels. Black skin became synonymous with abnormal, dumb, childlike, and having a need to be governed, ruled, subjugated, inferior. Unfortunately, these same labels continue to fuel white supremacy, racist attitudes, and racist perceptions to this day. So as a Black mother raising Black children, I'm saying to you, we can no longer be comfortable being silent. Don't just let this stuff happen in front of you. Confront it. confront the differential treatment, racial slurs, and sideline conversations.
I am Reverend Larry L. Simmons Sr. I'm senior because I am the father of 8 sons in a blended family. My wife brought 3 and I brought 5 to our family. 5 sons. I've been a Black man for 73 years in America. I am a follower of Jesus. And I am pissed off. There is a rage that we all share as men. It's a rage that we tuck behind our ties and our Brooks Brothers suits or our wherever we get them. We tuck it behind our coveralls. We tuck it behind our smiles. We tuck it away, but it seethes in us because when we are young and thrown up against a wall and told by police officers, I don't want to see anything but elbows and when we are grabbed by our genitals with no recourse and have jokes made about the size of our genitals. These are not made up stories. This is my life. This is what Larry Simmons lived. And I'm going to tell you, most of my friends who walked this path with me are long dead. They died from drug overdose and they died from murder. This rage first turns in. We fuel it, it eats us. But sometimes, like Langston Hughes says, it explodes. And what you are seeing today in the street is the righteous anger of centuries of abuse. I remember Mark Clark. I remember those babies now being held in pens, captives at the border of this country. And we should have been in the street 7 months ago when they started caging these babies like we're in the street today. And that rage that we witnessed over and over and over has spilled out. Let me tell you something. The first thing your oppressor will try to take from you, any oppressor, is the right to be angry and express it. Well, I'm here today to tell you, you got a reason to be mad, and don't let nobody tell you that you shouldn't. Yes, we should protest. Yes, we should pour out into the street. But this is a moment for us to build. I am so encouraged by the leadership of these young people who will speak truth to power. And so as a Black man, 73 years in, the father of 8 sons, the father of 8 grandsons, I want to say thank you. Thank you, young people. And don't let anybody tell you that you should shut down or shut up. Stand up. We've had enough. We've had enough.
This poem is for Black boys. In order for something to receive protection under the Endangered Species Protection Act, it must be endangered or threatened by at least one of the following factors. 1, a decrease in natural habitat. 2, inadequate protection from man-made factors affecting its survival. 3, overutilization for scientific or educational purposes. See, one of 3 of these threats would save an elephant, a rhino, a spider. But Black boys get natural habitat gentrified. Black boys be subject of Tuskegee experiments. Black boys learn to run with their hands up, heads low, and still ain't made no protection list. We've demanded no action. I'm raising a Black boy, and sometimes I pull his clothes out and search for the bullseye. Sometimes I make him practice holding his hands up real high. Wiggle your finger, son. I've painted his inhaler red so it doesn't resemble a weapon. Cops and robbers have been replaced with cops and Black boys, and you might be tempted to call this a war zone. But let me remind you that in war, both parties are armed. Both know what they're getting into. Both have eyes on their enemy. This is no war. This is hunting. Cops in camouflage, Black boys running free until they don't. How I wish you were the animal you get caught. Instead of my son, I wish you were a rare tree. I would chain myself to you and demand we honor your importance. I call my baby boy Elephant. This is no cute pet name. This is me trying to convince the general public that he ought not be shut down in his prime. This is me calling him anything but a Black boy, anything but the child of a woman named NKENGE. Don't Black mamas have no mercy? No rides to the clinic, no access to birth control. Why we keep having these Black boys who die so young, they mamas buy caskets with baby shower gift cards. Black boys are dying before their school pictures come back. While their coat's still big, we keep lying to them. Baby, you gonna grow into that coat. Black boys ain't growing into anything, ain't feeling nothing but cemeteries. Get funerals, get hashtags, get their pictures on t-shirts, get everything but older. Black boys make the news, make their 12-year-old cousins pallbearers, make hoodies into political statements, make their mamas do more than just consider rioting, make their mamas do more than just consider the riot. When all the Black boys are gone, when we can only find their bones, will we display them in glass cases or take those bones to museums and continue to hang them?
I speak to allies. There are often questions posed, what can I do? And we collectively would like to share a few recommendations. Number one, in writing, answer this question to yourself. What would it cost you to confront anti-Black comments made by your family and friends in your presence? Let me be clear, this is not a rhetorical exercise. Make the list and take the action. Number two, if you are going to show up to support Black actions, check in with the leadership and take their instruction on what support they want provided. Leave your personal agendas in the car. Number three, educate yourself. Learn about implicit bias, the history of slavery, historically and modern, and the impact of systemic racism on African Americans in every space that we enter. Given these recommendations, I encourage all allies to make a plan. Set your schedule and make it happen. Be intentional. Again, take the action. Our allies have listened to us and adopted our recommendations. Please pay close attention as they are modeling the recommendations to listen and follow the leadership of the community on this issue. In this space today, we are modeling what we think is necessary in this moment and to encourage others to do the same.
I struggle with how to even introduce ourselves in this moment. Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Caribbean, Central and South American, Chicano, Boricua, Indigenous, Afro-Latino, Mestizo, or Hispanic, Latino, Latinx. We aren't even sure what name to call ourselves that isn't rooted in our own oppression. But what we do know is that our history has been intertwined with that of our Black brothers and sisters for the past 500 years. We have all experienced the impact of systemic racism and oppression, but it shows up differently in our different communities. And if we're honest with ourselves, there have been many times when we have also contributed to racism against the Black community. And again, I mentioned Trayvon Martin. There remains a lot of internalized racism and colorism in our community, even between ourselves and within our own family sometimes. We need to have long, hard conversations about our past in order to have a chance of a free future for all of us. So the question in this moment is, how do we show up right now for our Black brothers and sisters? As allies, what is our role right now? How do we follow the leadership of our Black brothers and sisters in this moment?
There's an old axiom we used to express back in the 70s in my early days of activism. We must fight the attempt to divide and conquer us. Thus, we have to educate ourselves and others in order to organize for effective coalition between communities of color. At various times in our history, Latinos have been strong allies with the African American community to fight for our common rights. but at other times, division over particular interests, as Angie mentioned, colorism, and even racist beliefs have hampered that. That often varies based on the specific Latino ethnic group and historical period, though I definitely do not want to deny or minimize these difficulties. I will focus more on what should lay the basis for increased unity. I believe if you don't know your past, you don't understand the present, and then are not prepared for the future. So, did you know that the majority of people with African and Native American heritage in this side of the world come from and or live south of what is now the Caribbean and South America, Latin America? That the first free Black community in what is now the US was in St. Augustine, Florida during Spanish colonial times. That the taking of Texas in the Mexican-American War, which meant that Mexico lost more than half of its territory to the US to become what we now call the Southwest, that in addition to being a land grab, was a direct prelude to the Civil War 20 years later. That slave owners grabbed more territory to expand their power, and that they had a bad reaction to the fact that by the time of the US Civil War, Mexico already had 2 Black presidents, Vicente Guerrero and Juan Maria Morelos, and an indigenous Indian president, Benito Juarez. That definitely scared them. That was a threat to them. That the premier institution for nationwide study, a worldwide study, in fact, of the African experience in the world was established by a Puerto Rican immigrant before Puerto Ricans were US citizens, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. That Thurgood Marshall referred to the successful Mendez case of the late 40s in California and a previous mid-1930s case regarding Mexican Americans in Texas during the famous 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that officially eliminated school segregation. That one of the first 2 Latino communities in Detroit, established in 1918, was an Afro-Puerto Rican community which originally settled in Black Bottom and eventually integrated into Detroit's own African American community. That the AIDS struggle of the late 80s and early 90s in Detroit specifically was essentially an African American and Latino coalition led by CHAG, AIDS Partnership, Latino Family Services, and others. I could go on, but you get my point about this common history. Let's use this history to guide us in new measures and struggles, and realize that we can overcome if we really pay attention to the divisions among us. Thus, in our aim to build a coalition must address the following matters that all have a racial impact on us. The outright coddling of white supremacists by Trump and many elected officials. The lack of a national response to the COVID pandemic, which essentially is hitting our communities the worst. The call to address the call for militarization to quell the current national movement. Even the response to Hurricane Maria's impact on Puerto Rico was devastating, and Puerto Rico's an Afro-Taino nation. Trump was kicking off his presidential campaign, lashed out at Mexicans with racist taunts, and from the very beginning, escalated this racism. We have our work cut out for us, but I'm so inspired by young people, and these are new folks that are to the struggle and veterans who, hopefully can give some guidance. So I thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you for calling on us to continue the conversation with white folks about how we should be contributing to the movement. How I want to start off this message to white people is that racism is not a people of color problem, it's a white people problem. We need to unlearn everything we were taught as white folks in order to undo the ways in which we hold up and benefit from racism. Dismantling white supremacy is our job. We built these systems and we continue to benefit from them. We've been propping them up, so it's time to start to tear them down. It's not enough to simply be not racist. We have to push ourselves to be actively anti-racist. It takes work, it creates tension, but it will ultimately be liberating for ourselves and for our Black and brown siblings. We need to ask ourselves every day, what does it mean to be white in this world, in this country? And then we need to do the work of following Black and brown leadership to dismantle the systems that are harming Black folks, including dismantling the police systems. Today, I'm thinking about Breonna Taylor as we respond to this call to action from our Black colleagues. Again, I want this to be really clear. We must follow the leadership of Black and brown folks as we are fighting. Stop and listen. And as the white folks who are part of the COVID313 coalition, we're being called to action now.
If you are coming to a rally for Black folks, check in with Black leadership before you start using the movement for Black lives to run our own white agendas. We are asking you to listen to the demands and asks of our Black leaders and their response to police accountability. There are many asks out there to donate and to support the campaigns of leaders of color in your own community and across the nation. It is our time to listen and to act on what they're asking of us. Black folks are calling to us to not unpack our white experiences or emotions with Black leadership. Do not have Black folks care for our white tears or our white emotions. Find white friends like myself for that. We are here for you. Don't put that emotional labor on our Black and brown friends. Our role is to show up in the movement for Black lives and to do our work outside of the Black community to show up in a healthy and supportive way. The system of racism is not just the overt racism we often point out, like the Ku Klux Klan. It is the everyday system that is the foundation of our country. The police, our schools, our courts, our homes, our workplaces, everywhere. It is the foundation of how our systems function to benefit white folks. It shows up in our individual interactions and in these systems. That's called white supremacy. And it's on us to tear it down and destroy it. Everywhere we see it, including in ourselves, from the White House to inside our individual bodies. If we aren't fighting that system, we are complicit with the murder of Black lives. That's why I denounce the treatment of Detroit Police Department against Black people, against protesters. And we call for the defunding and divestment from police systems, including school police. White people join the fight to defund and divest from police. Youth I work with are launching a campaign to defund the police. We urge you to get involved. Ann Braden, a white activist, wrote a quote about 30 years ago, and it said this: "We do have a choice as white people. You don't have to be part of a world of lynchers. You can join another America. We urge you to join the other America with us, other white allies."
We all have a part in this movement. It's gonna take us all to dismantle the systems of racism. And it's on us to fight this anti-Blackness. Co-liberation takes all of us. I'm gonna ask all of our allies to turn on your camera. And together, we say, Black Lives Matter.
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 They matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Matter.
La vida negra es importante. La vida negra.
We've had enough.
Black Lives Matter.
And I want to say it in Arabic, so مهمة هي حياة السود. Black Lives Matter.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.